Yeah. Well, welcome to our final installment of the Quest Lecture Series. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm very grateful to the seminary for the opportunity to come and serve here. As you know, I have a special place for the seminary. I have a special place for the pre-sem students and seminary students. It's a tough gig, and I'd like to support them as much as possible in every conceivable way, whether it's intellectual, academic, pastoral, spiritual, all of these ways. It's a very important calling, and it's got its moments. So I'm very grateful to be here. I'm grateful to President Gimbel and Steve Chambers for inviting me to come. I've really enjoyed being with you all and getting to know you a bit better, and to talk about things that I think are very important for everyone in the church. So I've given you my latest paper that's gone out to the publishers. It talks about a lot of the things that we've looked at throughout this course, mainly issues of truth and tolerance and, yeah, I'm not there yet. Kind of background information for the issues and what we're being confronted with in terms of mission and evangelism in the church. I'm very grateful to have Melissa Moore here. She used to be Goldstone when I first met her. Melissa is a human being in her own right. She has her own name. But you may know her husband, Pastor Vince Moore, who's out in Fort Saskatchewan. He was one of my original Hebrew babies. I've got to see him, and then Melissa came on the scene a year or two later, and Melissa was in the first class that I ever did on religion and pop culture. There was 2 guys and 7 girls, and boy, we really felt it. We had to go for counseling after that, because the girls were very, had their views on things. And tonight we're going to see exactly the main divide between men and women on the movie Blade Runner. The guys love Blade Runner, and the girls hate Blade Runner. And one of the ongoing comments, I guess, with the girls, because some of them live together and they often would watch the movies together, and is that some kind of sexual metaphor or something in there? And it's just so, we see all these things in movies and they're trying to figure it out and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. But I'm really glad because Melissa is going to take us home. She's going to do the last presentation. I'm going to talk about Blade Runner in a minute, and Melissa is going to do one of my all-time favorite presentations on the mall as church and shopping as worship. And it seems like a hard to conceive of idea to begin with, but I'm sure after you see Melissa's presentation, you will understand that this was all very intentional, the whole concept of the mall and certain values that it has instilled in us. So one of the lectures that I do, I usually call somebody in from marketing, either Carrie McKinnon or Mark Lunow, to do Advertising and Marketing 101. And because marketing and advertising are so influential in our lives, and most of the time we don't even realize it. So Melissa's going to show us how the philosophy of consumerism was systematically instilled, how it's built into the architecture, into the signage, all these sorts of things. So I'm really looking forward to. She also presented at our conference on religion and pop culture. So again, I'm very excited to have Melissa.
Thank you.
But before we go any farther, let us pray. Shall we? Our loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for Jesus. We thank you for your Spirit. We thank you for the opportunity to learn the 2 books, the good book, the book with absolute truth, the book that is our benchmark, that we look to know and understand truth in the world that we live in, where there's so much deception and manipulation going on. And so we're grateful for the opportunity to see how theology deals with movies, how your word helps us to discern good from evil, and for us to tailor and help people relate to the gospel in better ways. So I thank you for this opportunity for these people who have come out faithfully over the last 4 weeks, and I pray that this course and what we learn will be valuable in their own lives and as they act as salt and light in the world. So we ask for all of this with praise and thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen. So, theology of Blade Runner. Last week I was hoping to teach you how to do theology of the movies, that there are certain ways of looking at movies, and hopefully as well, I've heard this quite a bit, I think I've even heard it from the first class with Melissa, that once they take the course, they never watch movies the same way. And that's a good thing, because rather than spoiling it for us, once we understand the mechanics of what's going on, as I'm going to demonstrate here in Blade Runner, we get a lot more out of the movies. So most people feel, remember movies are affective, they affect our emotions before we think through the issues. But along with those feelings are certain philosophical messages. And what we will see, particularly in Blade Runner, is how Ridley Scott, the director of it, what his theology is, how he really feels about God. So I probably should add a little section on Ridley Scott, which is just put that in there. I usually have an additional handout as well. So Ridley Scott was born and raised in England. His father was in the military. He moved around a lot. He was an altar boy in the Church of England, and when he got into his teen years, he rejected the church. He rejected Christianity. He's famous for his movies Kingdom of Heaven, Gladiator, Prometheus, and in many of these movies he explores religion and theology. And so he is very much against organized religion, and yet many of his films have spiritual or theological themes in it, which raises the question, why is that? And I think it's the same thing that the zombie phenomenon foists upon us. It exposes our deepest anxieties, and I think an intuitive awareness, as Paul says, the Apostle Paul says in Romans 1, that the truth can be seen in creation. Remember, we talked about general revelation in literature, movies, advertising, etc. That people intuitively know that there is a God. And that's actually what they're looking for. Having said all that, now in the 20th and 21st century, we have been exposed to so many, we're in the age of information, we have so many competing ideas, and yet we still are seeking something. So let's start to unpack the theology of Blade Runner. This is a seminal text in religion and pop culture. There's several books that have been written on it, and many articles written on it. But to understand where the movie is coming from, we have to look at its literary background. Ridley Scott is a graphic designer by trade. If you watch The Making of Prometheus, a movie that came out a few years ago, essentially parallels Genesis 1 through 11, but he actually sketches out the whole movie while they're writing the script. He does have a literary background for this, but he's known for his visually stunning movies, and you can get this image. So you see the big skyscraper that has the big screen TV on it, and the police cars that fly, and but again, they're very visually stunning and they're very atmospheric. There's this real atmosphere about it. It's interesting because in Blade Runner, there's only a couple occasions when you see daylight and it's filtered, but the vast majority of the movies, I think it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, is in the dark and it's raining continually. I thought I was living in Glasgow again when I was watching. I'm kidding. But that's part of the atmosphere. And so this is part of the portrayal. So our literary background, Blade Runner is based on a novel by Philip Dick. And there he is. He's a very influential science fiction writer. And the book was called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And in many ways, he was way ahead of his time. Ridley Scott has also done a documentary series on prophets of science fiction. And he looks at Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001, Isaac Asimov, I, Robot. I don't know if he actually does one on Philip Dick. But he's a very visionary, so he started writing in the 60s and 70s and the like. He also wrote a short story called Total Recall. You may have seen the movie. It originally came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1990. A recent version came out with Colin Farrell. The Irish actor is taking over for Arnie. And it got trashed by the critics and everything, but we watched it and we thought it was actually a very good remake of it. Certainly the special effects were better there. So that's another book that he's done. Deckard, the main character in Blade Runner, he is played by Harrison Ford. He is a detective, and it's very much based on film noir. So those are the films that came specifically out of the 40s and 50s. In black and white, your trench coat cop with the hat, and very stylized, but also very dark, and the 40s and 50s, that was pretty cutting edge. Usually exploring some of the more seedy parts of life. And so Harrison Ford plays Deckard. And really what Deckard is there to do is to explore the question of what does it mean to be human? And as you can understand, when we're on the age of technology, when we're on the age of robotics, that some of the questions, we saw that in Star Trek, in the original TV series, where Spock, who is a Vulcan, well, he's half Vulcan, and lots of times he showed emotion. But anyways, Vulcans aren't supposed to show emotions. And when Captain Kirk buries him in space, he's, during his eulogy, he says he was the most, out of all the people that he's encountered in the galaxy, he was the most human. We have a similar phenomenon with Data in Star Trek: The Next Generation. One of the interesting questions that Rachel later on will ask is, Mr. Deckard, did you take this test? And it's the test to see if you are a robot, a replicant. So what makes us human? Is it simply a body? Okay, so physicality. Certainly human beings have a body. Certainly there is physicality about us. But there's more to us than just that. So in the Shema of Deuteronomy 6 here, O Israel, the creed of Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and soul and mind and strength. And so there is a physicality about what it means to be human, but there's also the idea of emotions and feelings. So all theology is done by analogy, which means they're comparisons, and all analogies are partial and faulty in some respect. So God reveals that he has emotions. The one that set Oprah Winfrey off to become the cult of Oprah was, God is a jealous God. And that just didn't ring true to her, so she made up her own religion. And you can watch Super Soul Sundays. That's one of the topics in religion and pop culture. It wasn't in Europe, right? It's up to 55 topics, but that's now one of the topics. That he gets angry, but also, most importantly, and most especially, he loves. We see in Genesis before the flood that he is actually hurt by human beings and violence that's going on. Freedom, or acts of the will. So in the Garden of Eden, you may eat of every tree that you like except one. Okay, that may seem like a setup, but yeah, I agree. Yeah, you have to see my lecture on that. I'd say that, don't I? It is a setup. Having said that, all philosophers, regardless of whether they're atheists or theists, will agree that to have freedom, you need to have choice. You have to be able to choose something. So we're going to see the theme of freedom and bondage in Blade Runner. So very much Roy the antagonist, or is he the protagonist? Is he a type of anti-hero? Well, we're going to see how that plays out. He feels in bondage, so for example, in terms of finiteness, we can roll forward to that one. Our mortality. So replicants are given 4 years to live. Human beings are given 70, right? 70 years is our lifespan. So we are time constrained. We are in a limited capacity. We are in bondage to a certain degree. But freedom is a very deeply seated part of what it means to be human. And we'll actually see how Roy struggles with that, both in terms of actions, but also in terms of his mortality. We have to look at Genesis 1 through 3. It is definitely the literary background. We can say it comes that way in a roundabout way, because in Genesis 3 we see the fall of Adam and Eve from perfection, from innocence, and from purity to original sin, guilt, and impurity. So we're going to see this played out in Blade Runner as well. So we go from the freedom of choice to the bondage of original sin, which is all that we can do now. From eternal life, although I think that's a questionable premise, were Adam and Eve created eternal? I don't think that they were, because I think it was a setup. And I think the goal was always for us to be in heaven. But time sequencing is, I guess when you're the infinite God, time and sequencing, yeah. So, but let's give it, we go from eternal life to temporal death, the bondage of time. Blade Runner is also based on John Milton's Paradise Lost. So in intertextuality, this is a postmodern literary critical technique that I learned at Glasgow University. Intertextuality essentially says there's nothing new under the sun, that no piece of art is original. So every song that is written borrows phraseology from other places, takes ideas. Every movie is the same way, every piece of pottery. So every piece of pottery, let's say a jar, has an outside and it has an inside and it may have a lip. Those things may change, but there is nothing truly new under the sun. And so we see literary dependency. I try to help students with this as well. Why do you have to take this religion stuff at Concordia? Well, it's good for you, and our Western culture is based on the Bible. And many of our metaphors and pieces of art come out of the Bible. So it's important to look at the primary text first of all, but that once we understand, remember the two books with Van Gogh, the Bible, specific revelation, and the piece of French literature, there is a dialogue. And so we're going to see how in intertextuality, John Milton's Paradise Lost is a part of Blade Runner. It also happens to be based on Genesis 1 through 3. So there's nothing new under the sun. The first part deals with Lucifer, the fall of Lucifer. This is Durer's very famous woodcutting of that incident. But the most important part is the second half, which deals with Adam and Eve in the garden. And this is what's relevant for what we're looking at today. We should confer Ezekiel 28. So in Isaiah 14, it's dealing literally with the fall of the king of Babylon. And there is someone in a specific historical cultural context that it has a reference to. My own view, I'd have to go through a very long explanation to give you the short answer for tonight, which is, I think that the text is so beyond just a literal historical king that it has cosmic proportions. So I'm quite comfortable with seeing the fall of Lucifer in Isaiah 14. And Jesus says, I saw Lucifer, Satan, fall like lightning in Luke's Gospel, chapter 10. But in Ezekiel 28, I think we have a similar case where this is a prophecy against the king of Tyre. Tyre is a part of the Phoenicians. They became the coastal Canaanites after the Israelites conquered the Promised Land. And I just happen to be teaching ancient Near Eastern religions right now, and we're looking at the Baal epic. And the Phoenicians were brilliant people. They were famous for their shipbuilding and merchant trade. They gave us crucifixion, actually, because that's a public deterrent to thievery. Don't steal our stuff or you'll end up on a cross. And the Romans got it through them, either in the Levant or in Carthage. But whereas Isaiah 14 criticizes Israel for relying on military strength rather than Yahweh, the one true warrior God, warrior king, Ezekiel 28 criticizes Tyre for financial reliance, when they depend on money. And so we see this, it's actually a postmodern theme. In Blade Runner, we're going to see the Tyrell Corporation, genetic replicants, more human than human. So that's a part of their sales and marketing campaign. In Prometheus, we have the Wayland Corporation, and he is he's on the quest for eternal life. He wants to meet his maker, who are going to be aliens. Whereas we're going to see how Roy wants to meet his maker and how this all plays out. But that is a postmodern thing. We also see it in RoboCop. Yeah. So the Omni Corporation, where money and corporations are more powerful than government and police force, than normal structures that we can associate with authority. Okay. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, we find that that Adam is more intelligent but infatuated with Eve. So in my course in Ancient Near Eastern Religions, which is based on the fertility cult, it is all about the power of feminine sexuality and how stupid men are about it. The third thing, the subtext of it all, is the games that men and women play in relation to human sexuality, which is why the first time I ran this course in religion pop culture with these 7 girls, they were all complaining about men. That's why I had to go into. We're not sparing the details. So, this wouldn't be an interpretation that I would adhere to, but it's almost certainly to be found in Paradise Lost. Eve is innocent and submissive, but looking for something more. So in the ancient Near Eastern religions, we talk a lot about stereotypes, like the teenage brat girl. So in Canaan, El can't control his teenage daughter Anat, who is just a wild, sexually promiscuous and aggressive woman that her dad just has no idea how to cope with. So stereotypes are generalizations. We have to be very cautious with stereotypes. Like in a lecture is a generalization. You try to define important terms and the like, but you can't qualify absolutely every statement. So, but this is probably a safe interpretation of how Milton looks at Eve. So we have the idea of the bored housewife. Okay, it's about temptation and idolatry. As I've mentioned in this course a number of times, essentially religion and pop culture is about idolatry. It's about things that we worship. That's exactly what Melissa is going to show you with the mall as church and shopping and the like. We are tempted to buy another pair of shoes, right? We are tempted to overspend, so we have to be cleansed of our purchasing guilt. She'll talk about all these things later on. But in Milton, we have from Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained, and this is how Christ overcame temptation to redemption, to this kind of reversal. It's just dawned on me now, as I'm lecturing on this specific point, that I wonder if Paradise Regained has some literary influence in the movie, because we're going to see how Roy comes to awareness and how he will try to reverse the predicament. Blade Runner is very much based on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is very much based on Paradise Lost, by the way. And the basic message in Frankenstein is what happens when we play God with science and technology. So in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, there's a loss of innocence, there's a coming of age. They now know good and evil. The problem with them is that they can't control it. So we have the power to genetically modify human beings. This is a live issue for us today. This is again why I think this course is so relevant. And there are a number of movies that explore this idea. We are playing with fire. We are playing a very dangerous game. And so while all truth is God's truth, you'll recall that we need the Bible to guide us in terms of moral guidance and decision making. Yeah, so the knowledge to do evil, but not the wisdom or the morality to do good. And the reason for that is quite simple: original sin. We are all messed up ourselves. We make the monster because we are the monster. So in Frankenstein, that's what we learned. That's a reversal there. The brilliant scientist, Victor Frankenstein, creates life in the laboratory, if you're British, laboratory if you're North American, and he goes off chasing down the monster, trying to exact revenge for family death. I mean, there was some serious bad stuff happening to his family through the monster. But by the end of it, he made the monster because he is the monster. And that's the same with us. We are the monster. Same thing with the idea, we are the zombies. The monster is us. This is simply the reflection of human nature playing out. And Prometheus is another movie by Ridley Scott. So this is Weyland. He spent billions or trillions of dollars to get his spacecraft here to meet his maker. This is him meeting his maker, except the maker is an alien. And the alien is a very mean person. And he is going to use, from the movie Aliens, this is a prequel to the movie Alien, about the monsters that eat. That was a bioweapon that they devised. So the idea here is again, paralleling Genesis 1 through 6. God creates human beings, puts them in a world. That's what the engineers do. They create human beings through DNA technology, but now they're going to destroy them like God did in the flood. But they're going to use bioweaponry to do so. And so we are the monster. Okay, let's look at God the Father. This is a very Trinitarian movie. This is God the Father in Blade Runner. This is Tyrell. He is a brilliant scientist and a brilliant businessman. And he is the creator of the replicants, more human than humans. This parallels the idea with Tyrell and and Victor Frankenstein. So you can see the literary and visual parallels there. Again, the monster in Prometheus. This is not a coincidence. This is from the poster for the movie Prometheus. This is an idol, by the way, that they discover on the planet. And this is, of course, the most iconic view of the monster Frankenstein, played by Boris Karloff. Sorry?
Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff. I knew the name. I'm feeling fatigued here. And notice that in that portrayal, he has this gash in his head. That's not a coincidence that we see this gash here. So this is related to the idea of intertextuality. And for people that are paying attention, and some people are real movie buffs, and they're trivia buffs, right? And so they'll find spelling mistakes in movies or that sort of thing. But these are intentional parallels by Ridley Scott. Okay, Origins. This is Roy. He's a replicant. He's coming near the end of his cycle. He's a rebel. He has rebelled against the creator. He's rebelled against the company. He's rebelled against his owners. He's actually leading a rebellion as well. And he eventually is able to trick his way into seeing Terrell because he wants to meet his maker. And so there is this deep human desire to know our maker and to have a relationship with him. That's what Wayland is doing in Prometheus, and that's what Roy is trying to do here. Except Roy has a lot of baggage with his father in heaven. So in theology, this is called theodicy. Theodicy literally means justice of God. And so the questions are, is God just? God doesn't appear just because life doesn't seem very fair. Good people, you reap what you sow, the Bible tells us, but good people don't always get good and bad people don't always get bad. So it appears that God is unjust, he is unfair. This is a very serious issue. I mean, these two students here can tell you. The two things I struggle with daily are predestination of free will and theodicy. But that's what the book of Job is really questioning. And so Roy has a lot of baggage. As a pastor, I am never offended or shocked when people come into my office and they are angry with God because they've had a breakup, because their parents got divorced, because of an illness, because it's just one damn thing after another, and they're just trying to get an education. And so, to me, that seems like a natural. Catherine Dellett, Cambridge University, she's a Job scholar. She's written a book called Shaking the Fist at God. And what she's saying is that Job is a biblical example of how we can be angry with God and to vent it out. What we see here is Ridley Scott's view of God. His view of God is that God is a very mean and immoral God. So in Prometheus, why did they create us? Just to destroy us. Why is it a setup in the garden? Like in my view,
it's a long movie.
It makes the movie longer. If I was God, I would just make us the way I wanted us to be in heaven and forget about earth. I wouldn't, under no circumstances, allow the potentiality of even one soul going to hell for eternal damnation. So in the next election, vote for me for God. Okay, it doesn't work like that.
We'd all be robots.
We'd all be robots, that's right. Well, what does that mean in heaven, though? What will we be in heaven?
He's got a different answer for us.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure you're right. What I'm saying here is that people have legitimate questions and issues. So Isaac Asimov, who wrote 2001: A Space iRobot, he says the best case for atheism is the Bible rightly read and understood. And there's a lot of truth to that. By the way, I don't agree with that, just so you know, but I can understand it. I guess I grew up across from the Baptist church when I was a kid, and after my conversion experience, I was 19. There was a little old lady who taught me Sunday school as a child, and like I'd be 4 or 5. She said, "Oh, you used to ask the hardest questions, like why did God kill all those people in the flood?" So we can see where this is coming from. I think there are other explanations. Okay, so this leads to the whole idea of human hatred of God. I run a song, I mentioned that the conference next year is on atheism and the Christian faith. And there's a song by And actually it was Pastor Mark that, in that course, Dear God, that played it. And essentially it's Bertrand Russell, Why I'm Not a Christian, in 3.5 minutes. But in that music video, his hatred, he's an atheist, and yet he's talking to God in the song. It's a letter to God, Dear God. And he's talking to him about all the rotten things, all the people. He says, I'm not complaining about the price of beer. I'm talking about children dying of starvation every day. I'm talking about how people in the name of religion murder all these other people, and how crazy we are about it. So we see this human hatred of God, and because we blame God for the mess that we're in.
Not us.
No, not you specifically.
Not my fault.
But, yeah, right. So, yeah, we are the monster that he created. So actually the Apostle Paul deals with that as well in the book, in the letter to the Romans. We actually can't do that. But just to show the complexity, our next slide. This is the main character in Prometheus. This is Dr. Elizabeth Shaw. She is an archaeologist, and she finds this final piece of archaeology in the Isle of Skye. And again, it's a visually stunning movie, but she's actually Christian. And when she finds out that, she thinks that the engineers, the aliens have invited them, they gave a star chart to get there. And we have this number of archaeological, this is fiction by the way, there are a number of archaeological examples of this map. That's how they get to the alien planet. But I always find it fascinating, if you hate God and religion so much, why are you so obsessed with it?
No, it's such a deep hatred.
A deep hatred.
It's not just a...
But at the end of it, even when she discovers that the aliens have tricked them and that they're these mean, vicious killers, the robot, David in it, is like a replicant, asks her, she always has her cross on, and he asks her, so now are you going to take it off? And she says no, and he says, why not? Because I choose to believe. Now that's bad theology, that's decision-based theology, by the way. That's popular theology, but don't you find it ironic and interesting that someone who hates God and has such a mean view of God just can't get rid of him? And can't get rid of he makes a Christian the centerpiece of his movie. Okay, so anthropology. Here we have Roy and Pris. And Roy and Pris are Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They are created perfect. They're absolutely beautiful, perfect specimens. And they have incredible physicality. Like they have 10 times normal human strength. And there's an innocence. So it's not a coincidence. This is them coming out, and look at the innocence. They're beautiful, they're perfect, their physicality. But look at how masterfully Ridley Scott and the way that that's shot and the acting is, how innocent they are. Just like Adam and Eve in the garden. It's not a coincidence. We also have the idea of the knowledge of good and evil. What's this part? Oh yeah. So on the negative side, having knowledge but not the power to control it. So same thing that happened in the Garden of Eden. We have to compare this with the idea of technology. So this is dystopia. I think we talked about it last class. It's the opposite of Thomas More's utopia, the ideal world. This is the dark opposite of it. And this is the city, this is Los Angeles in 2025, which is just around the corner. But anyways, it's a dystopia, it's a hell of our own making. And part of the problem is technology. Rather than, technology is knowledge, but it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. The problem with technology is that it's in human hands. And we create this world. We created the environmental mess we are in. We create this political climate and the like. But also we can look at the idea of apocalyptic without God in the Terminator series. So the Terminator series is an apocalyptic end times series that is very much based on Revelation, the book of Revelation, the apocalypse in the New Testament there. But they have factored God out of the formula, because the bottom line message is that we can save ourselves through technology, by time travel, by robots, by genetic modification, etc. Okay. The power of feminine sexualities for objectives. So, Pris here, played by Daryl Hannah, she is Eve and she is the temptress. Again, I think there's some pretty faulty theology here. But having said that, she is a very sexually aggressive, and she is not afraid to use the power of feminine sexuality to achieve her goals. So this is the objectification of women. So she is a temptress. And then mortality. The fact that we all have to die. And we blame God for that. Well, He made us. He says we can only live. How come we weren't created eternal? We have 70. All right, let's move on to the Son of God. You have to look at Romans 5, 12 through 21. And I'm not saying that these at all points are neat and tidy here. But in Romans 5, we have the analogy of the first Adam is the Son of God. Literally, that's how Luke traces the genealogy down through to Adam, who is the Son of God, literally born of God. That Adam fell into sin. Original sin corrupted us all. What we need is the second Adam. So by creation and contaminated by sin. The second Adam is the Son of God, but this one is the Redeemer. So He is going to purchase us back. And so this is not a coincidence. This is the death scene. I'm just going to run this scene in a minute from the movie Blade Runner. And just before he does this, remember the scene where he pushes the nail through his hand? He has got Deckard hanging off a building. He has the power of life and death over him, and we're going to see how he chooses to respond to that. But he puts a nail through his hand. That's not a coincidence. Notice his positioning, crossed, and what is he holding? A dove. A dove. The Holy Spirit. And we're going to see how that plays out. Jesus says it is finished, and He breathed His last and gave up the ghost. And so also, and Jesus breathed on them, this is the insufflation of John 20:21, and said, receive the Holy Spirit, the one who makes you born again. And so when Roy dies, we'll see how the dove is released. And it's one of the lines, it's a very famous line that comes out of this, Rutger Hauer actually wrote the line and pitched it to the director, and so they used it. Yeah, I think we'll play it right here. So, just a second, let me just, yeah, so Deckard's on the rope. He could kill him. Deckard has been trying to kill him for months. He's been hunting him down. And Harrison Ford is now in a position to die, and we're going to see, and Roy is coming to the end of his 4 years. And we'll see how this plays out. Yeah, we can go now. Little phone, please.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-hour gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
So, observations, comments.
I think he definitely uses the music to get its point across, especially with the dumb city. Really can't deny.
Deckard is baffled by what he's saying to him. Because he just
Yeah.
had the power to kill him,
Right, yeah,
but he didn't.
they did, he saved them.
Yeah.
He just-
He gave his life for his life. So, which leads us to some interesting messages. I should probably jump to those. But anyways, another theme that's demonstrated here in the movie is the idea of the prodigal son. He is the son that the father loves and created. Remember last week that powerful scene with Gina Rollins in Light of Day when she was in the hospital? And Joan Jett is the prodigal daughter. She's the prodigal son. She's the rebel. She's the one who's bad news for her mother. And remember, that's Paul Schrader's relationship with his mother. But she's the one that she loved. She was the special one. And there was that special kind of relationship. And so Roy goes wayward, but he returns to the father like the prodigal. What's the bottom line message of all this? We can save ourselves. That we don't really need God. We don't need organized religion. We don't need the church. We can have human saviors and heroes. So Joseph Campbell wrote The Power of Myth, but also the hero with 1,000 faces. And that became the basis of Star Wars. Did we talk about that in this class?
I don't think so.
And so Star Wars, again, is an attempt to usurp organized religion, to make it accessible to all people, and to have human saviors, heroes that can save us. It is a dead end. And I'll come back to that when I make the conclusions. Apocalyptic dystopia, back to that idea. This is the mess of our own making, but it is hopelessness. So what the zombie apocalypse is also about. It's about hopelessness. That's what The Rain is about, the darkness in Blade Runner. It's hopelessness. We made this mess. We are suffering because of our own sins. And Roy, that's the famous line, all those moments will be lost like tears and rain. Powerful. It's raining and he's dying. And so one of the things that Blade Runner explores is the idea of memories. I think we did talk about this before. People want to leave a legacy. Andrew Carnegie's famous, probably one of the first, what we would call a billionaire now. He was a multimillionaire there, Scottish guy. He gave us Carnegie Hall, and he had to have his name on everything. Donald Trump, we have Trump Tower. People are trying to leave a legacy. so that they'll be remembered. I tell my students about the bench. I like to sometimes walk out to the bench on the corner here and look over the river valley, and there's the bench dedicated to a couple. And I was just saying to my religion and pop culture class yesterday, in 1,000 years, will that bench be there? Will anyone remember them? And we have that in the Gilgamesh epic. It looks like Gilgamesh, the guy going through midlife crisis. He loses his best friend. He goes on a quest for immortality. He realizes it's a one-shot deal for his relative Utnapishtim. And some scholars think that this leads him to acceptance, that we all have to die. But then he takes the ferryman, who ferries us over to death. Don't pay the ferryman, Christopher. To see the walls at Uruk, his legacy. Well, I show the class the walls of Uruk that Gilgamesh built, this rubble. People want to be remembered. And that's why, by and large, I like liturgy and I don't like contemporary Christian music too much, but my wife loves the song, He Knows My Name. Because it's not so important that other people remember us as God remembers us. And that's something that lasts forever. I guess I really struggle with this question. Like, why do they, isn't it like banging your head against the wall? Okay, so Blade Runner, Terminator, zombies, Crash, they're all showing us that we're messed up and life's a dead end, but there's no gospel, there's no hope. Why do we keep putting ourselves at? It's this persistent rejection of God, traditional religion, Christianity, and what is at the heart of it? Rebellion. Pride, our vanity. I don't need God. I can be an atheist. I've got science, I've got intelligence, I've got science, I've got technology. And she took and she ate. Rebellion. Once you get down Genesis 3, all of this can be seen. Because ultimately technology is a Tower of Babel. This is not a coincidence. This is also based on the movie Metropolis from 1929. And in that it was an exploration of the same themes of how the scientific revolution and technology is essentially a Tower of Babel. And that image there in the opening scene of Blade Runner is actually a modern version of Metropolis, and that is the Tower of Babel. But again, how come Ridley Scott can't figure that out? A Tower of Babel is trying to work our way to heaven. It's trying to do it our way, without God.
So it'd be interesting to find out why he turned away from his faith. And do you find more non-practicing Catholics are angrier than any other
They have a lot more guilt to deal with.
Yes, they do.
I
Definitely.
don't know.
Because I know several people that are practicing Catholics, and they're just
Yeah.
and maybe it's just the civil.
No.
There's a lot of and they can do it themselves. I can be good and kind. I don't need the church to tell me how to be good and kind.
No, you can't. The standard is absolute perfection. You know, all have fallen sin fallen short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
Summary, ultimately, is it a dead end? It's a relative gospel before death? I don't know. Summary conclusions, there is nothing new under the sun. Human nature has not changed. I just explored this theme with you in Blade Runner, a movie made in 1982. And I just recounted parallels with the text written 4,000 years ago called the Gilgamesh Epic, exploring the same kinds of themes and idea. I still think the Bible says it better with clearer revelation and soteriology, how we're saved. I made this point earlier on, that theology is an ongoing creative task. So it is important to be thinking. This is again why this course is so important to me. It's so important to me in relation to mission and evangelism. I think that the Bible is cutting edge. I think that the Bible is incredibly relevant. And I think it is absolutely necessary as a benchmark to measure all other things. So theology of the movies without Christian orthodoxy is a Tower of Babel and idolatry. The last point that I would want to make, and why this course is important for mission evangelism, well, moviegoers still need the gospel, and we need to meet them there, the theater. So to understand their world, where they're coming from, and to provide a clearer revelation. They have general revelation in movies, it's a dead end. They need the special, remember the 2 books? They need Isaiah 53 as reflected in the Passion of the Christ. That's all right.
What time do you want us back from the break?
10 after. You should be good, that's 50 minutes for you.
For sure.
Any questions or comments?
But I mean, a person that doesn't believe in God or whatever they do, but they whatever. So they think when they die, they just die, and they don't, obviously. So what does it matter what we do in our life? Right?
Who
We're
are
just
you
gonna
referring
die.
to?
Oh,
People in general?
anybody. Yeah, I guess in general, or anybody that's saying that there is no God. And there's no hell. There's no hell, there's no God. Then we die, we just turn to
Right.
dust.
Well,
So
a lot of
why
people-
does it matter?
Well, a lot
Exactly.
of people think that this world is hell. I've heard that expression a number of times.
Mhm.
And my response to that is always that if you think this is hell, just wait.
Yeah.
You ain't seen nothing. But I think definitely it's this, we can do it without. I don't need that. I don't need a bunch of rules, and I don't need all this stuff, and I don't want to follow that because I'm going to do what I want. And then when they do what they want and it doesn't work out, they're all upset. And then I always think, well, you got what you wanted. Oh, it wasn't what you wanted. Oh, but they don't get it. They don't get it.
Lawrence Krauss is a famous astronomer. I've been watching quite a bit of how the universe is made. He's also an atheist apologist. He defends atheism. He kind of got in, just because theists kept challenging him. If there is no God, and I was just talking about this, Nietzsche says, anything is possible. And what he means is all immoral things are
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
There's no need for moral restraint. If materialism is true and we're $6 of chemicals and a couple of gallons of water, the meaning of our life is nothing, nada.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the truth, that's fine, but that's a hopeless, despairing position. That
Yeah, because if we're wrong, oh well. But if they're wrong, right?
well,
we're
it's
right.
Pascal's
God.
wager.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah, we got heaven, so yeah.
Yeah.
And life isn't so bad if somebody dies. We love them, we care for them, ultimately they're in heaven. So it's not as distressing.
It's like as a pastor, when you do a funeral and the person is saved and going to heaven, like Russ Nelson. I mean, you can preach with power and clarity. It always bothers me as a pastor when I do a funeral and you're not quite sure. And they have this very sentimental view of they're all looking down at us. They're
watching
like,
over us.
on what basis?
How are they gonna look after us?
That's interesting because when my dad passed away, and to this day, I don't know if he was a Christian or not. He was raised in the church, but the way he lived his life and the way he did things, and so when his funeral came, I remember saying, or my sister said, he's gone to a better place, and I said, really? He said, is that what you believe? And she looked at me, and I said, because I said, from the dad that I know, I said, I have a feeling he ain't in a better place. And then, she kind of, and we're from a Catholic family. I'm now Lutheran, but my sister's still Catholic. And she says, well, I'm praying for him. I said, well, I suppose that's true, right? That makes you feel better.
That's the difference between Catholics too, is
they got a second
not,
chance.
Yeah, or we can keep praying, we can keep, and I don't know what happens, they just come to hell or how that,
You
it's an interesting.
see the postmodern sentimentality, how movies affect us before we've actually thought through it. People are already, because most people in our culture believe that.
Yeah.
They believe that they're okay.
Yeah.
And that this is just a nice sentimental
I
thing.
do not believe there is a hell. There's no
right. So
Well,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they think they're all right. Well, I'm no worse than the next person. I go, yeah, I'm not either, but I'm no better. I'm no worse. We're all sinners. When they go, well, they don't like to hear that.
They don't like the S word.
Sinners, I always chuckle about that because I think, well, you know, they think that we as Christians think ourselves as being, you know, spotless,
Yeah.
you know, all that. Where does that come from? I said, no. Difficult though.
Okay, let's listen.
Yeah.
Let's get
We
used
can
to
continue the chat.
All
right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm excited that I can dust off this presentation one more time. So, if we can move to the next slide, please. First of all, there's some things to remember here. We're talking here about how shopping is worship and malls are churches. We're not taking it in a very, very literal sense. We're not singing hymns to churches. Like, we're going more for the metaphor there. The other thing too is, especially if you're a man, don't think that you're immune to this. We're not just talking about shoes, we're talking about DVDs, we're talking about sports paraphernalia. A friend of mine in particular, yeah, whatever your poison may be, a friend of mine in particular gives himself a $200 budget per month for hockey cards.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That could feed
Yeah.
starving children.
Yeah, and then when he complains he doesn't have money, I smile and nod because, you know. So again, we're looking at the religion of this. We're talking more about the characteristics of religion more so than the institutional religion. And while it may seem ridiculous, for some people it does kind of become a religion. It becomes a big part of their life that they're really looking at. And I don't mean to apply once again that they're literally worshiping shopping. It's again more that metaphor. And just because you like to shop, it doesn't mean that you've made shopping your religion. There's a deeper level there. So if we can move forward. My full disclaimer: I love to shop. I really love to shop. So yeah, let's be honest there. All right, moving on. So postmodernism essentially tells people that we can't be sure of anything. This is what we just talked about with Blade Runner, and I'm sure you've talked about it a lot in this course. So people don't want to trust a religion. They want to look to themselves. They don't want to look to a deity for salvation. They're looking to break free from the confines of religion. They don't want to be bound by those rules, and they want to be free to live their own lives. But the problem is you're always a slave to something.
Yep.
Next.
So here's some fun facts. At an academic conference on the Mall of America held in Minneapolis, one speaker mentioned that the mega mall, so we're talking the big ones like West Edmonton Mall or the Mall of America in the States, they attract more visitors annually than all of the national parks and national monuments combined. A lot of people, especially for the States. That's Grand Canyon, that's all that stuff, right?
Wow.
The world average for all retail space, not just shopping malls, but retail space, is 4 square feet per person. And American shopping centers comprise 29% of that total. That's a lot. In Singapore, household spending increased 76% between 1988 and 1993. And window shopping ranks as the #1 leisure activity outside of the home. This isn't just here anymore. We're approaching new places. Almost all human faith traditions speak to the issue of materialism. In reviewing the teachings of the founders of the world's great religions, Arnold Toynbee found that they all said with one voice that if we made material wealth our paramount aim, this would lead to disaster. In the United States, many people are nominally Christian, you know, go to church on Christmas and Easter, or yeah, my grandparents go to church, so you know I'm good. But at America's malls, shoppers seem to forget that the Christian gospel promises an abundance of life, not a life of abundance. A quote by James Rouse: "Business people were the clergy of a new religion that transcended the parochial boundaries of creed and cult." The shopping mall then was to be the cathedral in this new religion, the sacred space for a universal faith with a distinct spirit. This quote is important because James Rouse is the guy who invented the concept of the mall. He's the one that came up with this whole idea. He was an urban planner and an architect and a real estate developer. So when we're going to take a look at how the architecture of malls mirror cathedrals and things like that, so you can see from here that it's very much on purpose. These are not accidents. So next slide, please. So again, looking at some of the architectural elements of malls. Contained in almost every mall is a center of some sort. It's usually found in the middle of a mall and consists of an open space that contains a fixture that has nothing to do with shopping. So for example, it could be a fountain, a clock, a sculpture. The center corresponds to a cathedral sanctuary where you would normally find your altar. This area of the church is usually well lit and displays important symbols of the faith, such as the cross. The same is true for this area of the mall, as the light, whether artificial or natural, accompanied by variously hued banners, is often so bright that it distinguishes the center from the rest of the mall. Just like cathedrals, malls attempt to impress us with a sense of heightened space, which in the cathedral serve to express infinity and transcendence. Malls try to inspire the same type of wonder that cathedrals do and copy the tried and true techniques. So, once again, not a coincidence. They're doing it on purpose. So we can take a look at a lot of the symbolism too. We have a lot of symbolism in Christianity as well as in other religions, and so, of course, it has crossed over into malls. Malls borrow a lot of symbolism from religions. For instance, water. Water is commonly used in many religions, especially in regards to baptism or purification. Malls use fountains, waterfalls, and reflecting pools symbolically to cleanse shoppers of any filthiness all the lucre involved in the place might suggest. And again, why would you put these things in malls? Yeah, it's a nice thing to look at, but they cost a lot of money, they're a lot of upkeep. They're there for a reason. These aren't just coincidences. Architects know what they're doing, and they know that by placing these details in malls, they can instill a sense of familiarity. Within the overstimulation, the shopper can still find their own sanctuary. Again, why would you put trees in a mall? Like, it's all on purpose. Let's move on. Just like religions have pilgrimages, so do malls. At an academic conference on the Mall of America, one speaker mentioned that the mega mall attracts more visitors than national parks. We already discussed that. And with malls acting as society's religious hubs, it follows that worshipers would be willing to travel a respectable distance in order to have a great shopping experience. An example of that is actually my husband's family. They're all from Dawson Creek, BC. 6 hours away. It was 9 hours before the new highway was built. But still, for as far back as my husband can remember, they made a trip to Edmonton every single November for all their Christmas shopping. And that's what you did, because it was better shopping than what you had in small town BC. So again, even if you think that really people don't do that, oh, they do. They do. And malls are only too willing to accommodate. They put hotels as part of the original design, like Fantasyland, right? It's all there to make it easy. With one of the main goals of malls being to present themselves as family environments suitable for people of all ages and particularly welcome to parents with small children, it's no wonder that families commonly travel no small distance to the end destination of a mall. With malls housing more than just shopping, they can provide hours of entertainment for all members of the family. West Edmonton Mall, for instance, boasts a water park, an amusement park, mini golf, and many more attractions. For those who prefer to leave the rest of the family at home, many shoppers explore far-off malls with their friends, making a prolonged vacation purely out of shopping. For big cities such as New York, a shopper could spend weeks there and never enter the same mall twice. Many women do it, right? Go on shopping trips with their friends, especially when you're from especially when you're from small towns.
Towns.
Yeah, I grew up doing that too.
All right, moving on.
But at the end of the day, there are only befuddled pilgrims, so bewildered by postmodernity and so lacking in orientation by churches and deep tradition that they imagine they might live in a fantasy world of readily available commodities and amusements upon which limits will never impede. The problem is that pilgrims can never make enough pilgrimages or purchases to make them truly happy. So, malls too, mirroring many religions, have sacred holidays. What religion would be complete without its assortment of national holidays? Holidays or holy days are usually commemorative days for a given religion. These are often marked by a special ceremony or other traditions, and there's no difference with a holiday in a mall. Malls have borrowed some of the most holy of holy days from other religions, but it's created some of its own. Here, the holiday is commemorated with a sale and ceremony of buying more than a shopper would on any other given day. Who hasn't gone Boxing Day shopping? Like,
Come on.
yeah, everybody knows it's coming. Black Friday, yeah, you're ready. You know what you're gonna get.
Let's keep going. If you live in a border town, a lot of people in like
Oh,
southern
yeah.
BC
Yeah.
go down to the United States. They'll cross the border at 2 in the morning to be there at 5 when the shops open at the outlet store in Seattle.
Yep.
Like
Like that.
It's crazy. You
We're
don't see a
talking
lineup
some-
at 2 in the morning at the border crossing any other time.
Yeah, we're talking some serious devotion here. It's a big deal, and
Hi, go on.
no, it's true.
People have died in shopping sales.
Yeah, you get like the
You get the
stamp
rioting.
things. Yeah, it's
People get
scary the
crushed to
lengths
death.
people go to. It is. And just like religious holidays, mall holidays are often marked on the calendar, accounted for in personal budgets, like your Christmas shopping, and include the whole family. Shopping also has our rites of passage. In different religions, it's common to have a rite of passage of some sort. For many Christian churches, such as the Lutheran Church, this actualizes in a confirmation course, which takes place during the preteen years. At this point in the person's life, he or she learns about the church and declares their faith to the congregation. For Jewish people, the equivalent is a bar mitzvah for the boys and a bat mitzvah for the girls. And for both boys and girls, the ceremony takes place at the age of 13 and signifies the coming of age into adulthood. The religion of shopping, of course, has its own rite of passage as well. The first credit card.
Well, yeah.
It's true though. I remember it being a big deal for me when I got my first credit card. For many shoppers, acquiring the first credit card is a day that's dreamed about. Special day is even complete with gifts bought with the new credit card, of course. It's a novelty coveted while watching parents use their own, and commercials make them seem so glamorous. It's that whole world of consumerism, right? And all that, like you were talking about advertising and things like that. I'm sure that would come into play here. They signify having reached an age where the shopper's parents can trust the shopper, and they're open up a whole new world of spending. For instance, it's hard to do online shopping until you have a credit card. Even if mom and dad are still the ones who pay off the balance at the end of the month, it seems to the shopper that he or she has been given a certain amount of financial independence. And with credit card companies targeting children, which scares me, it is no wonder that many shoppers want credit cards at increasingly younger ages. It's not just advertisements though. We raise our children to be consumers. If you think about it, even when we don't think about it, when how many people go say aloud when their children are in the room, oh, I'm going to need to get the new iPhone, even though the last one is still perfectly good. And how often when little Billy breaks something, it's okay, sweetie, we'll just get a new one, right? This is the stuff that we're teaching our kids. Yeah. Things are changing
That's
a little
old
bit.
school.
Yeah?
Do that then.
Or the one my parents were more guilty of was if you're really good during this, we'll buy you a treat. And a lot of that for
Bribery.
Yeah, I always got that at the dentist, going to the dentist. If you're good, look at you and So a lot of people shop to attain a sense of power. Many religions, especially mystical ones, offer believers some sort of power. So for members of the Taliban, power over others is seen as an attractive quality. Malls can function in a similar sort of way, as they have the ability to draw people in with their promise that you will not leave empty-handed. When life seems to be spiraling out of control, shopping is the one thing that a person has control over. I found this true for myself at a couple of instances in life. There was one point where I found out that me and my employer were being sued, and it was a very bad day. And so on my way home, I stopped at a mall and I found a shirt and it was on sale and I felt a little bit better. It's true. People control what they purchase by choosing which store, price point, item, size, brand, color, the list goes on and on. Even if the item is not in stock, a person has the power to have it ordered in. Even that little word, ordered, has the connotation of power to it, since it's usually used as a command. The end result is that within the span of only a couple of minutes, a person can make an enormous amount of decisions, which allows them to feel as though they have power over at least a small aspect of their life. The sense of power found in shopping is heightened as salespeople treat shoppers like royalty while imploring them to purchase their product. In a store, a shopper can try on dozens of different shoes, not buy any of them, and still be doted upon by those who are working there. The consumer is told that this is normative, as in these cultures, advertising and marketing play an all-important role, and privatism, or a focus on one's personal interests and desires, in contrast to a sense of public responsibility for others and for one's society, tends to dominate most people's thinking and behavior.
Shopping overdose.
Yeah, exactly. The experience as a whole lends itself to a sense of superiority, as for the most part, someone else must oblige the shopper's every request. The end result is that the travelers, pilgrims, tourists, and shoppers departing from the center find themselves renewed and strengthened as a result of the energy found there. Even if physically exhausted, their spirits are uplifted. For a short amount of time, the shopper has successfully controlled an aspect of their life. Who hasn't gone home and excitedly told somebody, look what I got? It's a good feeling. It is. I totally do it. A lot of people shop also to escape isolation. This is a big one for me now that I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't like sitting at home all day, every day with just me and my child. I'll go shopping just to get out of the house, absolutely. So this effect here has nothing to do with shopping at all. It's just to escape that isolation. Churches provide a sense of community for congregants where all are united with the common intent of worshiping God. They are a regular social outlet, especially when churches offer weekly events as opposed to only a service on Sunday. So this is kind of what's happening. Once again, we're looking at people choosing to live without a religion of sorts, but still finding that vacuum. You're still looking for those things that you would find in a religion. You're looking for those outings, and you're looking for all sorts of stuff that normally God would offer, or a church, as this case may be. Those who do not regularly attend a church, though, still have that desire to be around others whom they can share a common experience. The mall is a place where both young and old are at the shopping center to escape their respective worlds of loneliness. The young from fear of being alone, excluded, and different, and the elderly from boredom and lack of companionship. Malls provide a unified community, and our attraction to them is an indication of the urge, and sometimes desperation, we have to belong to a wider group, to be known by others, and to retain our identity as members of the human family. The meeting place for community has changed, but the drive is still the same. Of course, at the end of the day, we have buyer's remorse. One of the difficulties with worshiping at the altar of consumption is the regret felt when the ceremony of shopping is complete. The feeling may rise a month after the purchase, a week, an hour, or as soon as the shopper reaches the car. More commonly, this phenomenon is known as buyer's remorse. The term suggests a psychological dimension to consumption. The term remorse means a feeling that we've done something wrong and we've made some kind of mistake. That whole psychological aspect is something that at some point in my life I'd love to look into, but don't have the basis for it right now, because yeah, it's definitely there. Buyer's remorse occurs because we don't need all the stuff that we buy. But we feel that having these things will make our lives better, make us feel more alive. People enjoy the high they get from the sense of power that shopping brings. Advertising has told them that they will not be happy until they have bought that waffle iron, so surely they think it must be true. Some people describe the euphoric feeling that they attain through making purchases as being as good as sex. As intense as the feeling at the time of purchases are, though, they do not cover the remorse felt when the credit card bill comes in the mail. Again, this isn't everybody. Not everybody thinks shopping is as good as sex. But for some people,
I wouldn't be in that.
But again, it's for some people. Even though a person may fight belonging to an established religion, all people still feel pulled towards the issues that religion addresses. For example, each religion claims to have the true path to salvation. Whether this is belief in the risen Messiah, belief in the Messiah who is still to come, belief in the importance of good works, or whatever else a religion believes, all think that there is something specific that provides salvation for the believer. Once again, as we've already discussed, whether or not you want to believe in God, you've still got that vacuum, whether you believe in the power of yourself or, in this case, the power of shopping. 16th century Protestants trusted in grace to get them to heaven. Modern capitalists trust in the market to get them prosperity. The logic is identical, future-oriented hope. Shoppers trust buying to grant them a multitude of future-oriented things, such as status or power. For example, a shopper is likely to believe that to own an object that displays an expensive, sought-after brand will give the shopper a higher status in society, or at least in the shopper's own circle of friends. Why else would there be a Louis Vuitton? It's practical, it's expensive, but you think that people maybe think more of you if you own one. It's an interesting phenomenon. As a result, the shopper will fill his or her emptiness with stuff that he or she doesn't even need. That void, in reality, may be from years of emotional or spiritual deprivation, fear that there's never enough, whether it's money, material objects, recognition, or love. The goal is to make the purchases that will produce happiness or fulfillment. But they truly believe that buying material items will accomplish this. You really believe that, yeah, I will be happier if I get that new iPhone. Or I will be happier if I can get that whole collection of the team cards, whatever it is. Is shopping bad? No. It's necessary in order to provide for ourselves and our families. It's when shoppers attach a deeper meaning to buying that problems arise. People are looking for a greater meaning to life and are naturally drawn to certain elements of religion. However, God cannot be found at the bottom of a shop. Any questions or comments?
No. A lot of it's true.
Let's go shopping.
Well, again, a lot of people think that it's ridiculous when you hear the title, but yeah, you start looking at it and yeah.
Actually, I know people that's how they live.
Yeah.
Shopping is their religion.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it explains a lot of debt, right? Why would people go into debt when they don't need another sweater or another whatever? Well, you gotta look at a little bit deeper, right?
Jesus didn't mean forgive us our debts.
No.
Oh, when we're dead,
Yeah.
But I think it's related to that kind of debt.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I remember the first time we went to Edmonton Mall, and I've been there twice now. But
There was this big, huge skating rink in the middle of the
Yeah.
mall, and I couldn't believe it. And the hockey team plays there, or practices there or something occasionally.
Yeah.
It's so strange, but now I
Yeah.
get what you're saying.
Yeah. Again, it's all on purpose.
I had a friend visiting from Australia, and she was like, "So, I'm coming to Edmonton to experience Canadian winter.
Mhm.
Like, what are the things we should do? Like, what attractions are unique to Edmonton?" I said, "Well, we'll take you to the mall." And she goes,
Yeah.
"Why would we go to the mall? We have a swimming pool in our mall." She went, "You have a what?"
Yeah.
And so I took her there, and for a few minutes, she just stood inside the doors, just completely flabbergasted. Just the size and the people and
Just the magnitude.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Nuts.
Well, there's nothing like the feeling standing in line with your angel, the tree top.
Yeah.
For quite a few hours. My husband's waiting. He's waiting at home in Spruce Grove because we're supposed to go to in-laws. And so we blamed our little guy for this having a nap. Of course, it was way out before I got home. But I had to get that angel.
Yeah.
I mean, the angel wings are real. It's made in Germany. It's beautiful.
The real angel wings?
Absolutely. So when I put
That's
that
that's what the box said.
They just ripped him off some morning, just held him down.
That's what the box said.
Yeah.
The advertiser
I just go,
guaranteed it.
oh.
Yeah.
But that's the last time I went. Because it was either, next year, divorce. And I decided, no, I guess my marriage and family's more important than still my angel.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you start out, like you're newly married, family, and you're trying to get those things that, Christmas and decorations and, just that, all that stuff, right? That you feel you need.
Yeah.
But, I'm not paying full price because I'm cheap.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Well,
So I
again, it
thought
makes
I'd go there
There's
once
nothing
a
like
Yeah.
a good deal.
Oh, well, that's
Oh,
Boy,
come
you
on,
get a
free
good
advice.
deal.
Don't say
Have
that.
that item and you're
Gotta
like,
show that off.
But it's funny because you end up accumulating. You spend all
Yes.
your life
Yeah.
accumulating
Yes.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
Then when you get older
You get-
and you are downsizing, you have to get rid of it all.
Yeah.
And it's so
well,
stupid.
not yet, my angel's
It's so
not.
stupid.
Or not even
Accumulate
get
and then
older,
get rid of it.
like,
Yeah.
being here in university, like I'm from DC, and so I go back in the summertime, and it was like I had to move into dorm, and it was like I own way too much. Like, where am I gonna put all this
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah. But it seems so important at the time.
And even now that I'm here, like I'm like, oh, I gotta move in like 2 years. I gotta keep it down. I gotta fit it in one U-Haul,
Yeah.
and yet I keep accumulating stuff. And I'm like, where does it come from?
It's terrible. We are
Well, we've
terrible.
got media, we've got lots of,
Yeah.
And it come to the point, I mean, my age, or, I've looked at things, I don't need that. I mean, it
Yeah.
definitely, I
Yeah.
don't need to go to the mall, I don't
Yeah.
need to, I live in Spruce Grove, I rarely go to the city, where I would be there every second Friday, except every second Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I
Yeah.
mean, that, it was a different lifestyle,
Oh,
and
for
you just
sure.
go, you really don't need this.
Yeah.
That extra $50, $100, whatever I spend, can go to a charity, can go to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the
Right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, that's where I face, is like, I really don't, I mean, I still like shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we-
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there are priorities, and it's
Yeah.
a better place. It's like, we're blaming God for children that are starving.
Yeah.
But what are we fighting for? For same-sex marriage. These things that the media just keeps pounding, and it's like, well, there's far more important things to be fighting for.
Mhm.
Things that are not, having lunches and they go to school and they work in the lunch school. So you see that, right?
But my definition of temptation is distraction.
Mm.
Anything that distracts us away from God.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So,
It's
Well,
true.
and even
we
the
were so
folks-
distracted.
Yeah.
Very distracting. This society we have today it lives its life as distraction.
Yeah.
You look at people with their iPhones and just everything, every little second is
Yeah.
taken up and filled with noise or with distraction or whatever to keep us off balance, off guard, and away from those things that are important, which is very sad. That's really sad. It's a hard one to fight.
And again, it's the issue with technology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's information constant. We have a book fair right now at our school, and we do very well. And and I feel, because I'm the library tech, so I get the money, but we sell for over $12,000 in sales in this book fair. So I get book people in. And you know, the kids, they eat it up, right? You know, we present, it's open all day, we come in, I show them around, you know, and I tell them, don't buy the Guinness World Records, it's $38 and you can get that if you really want it. You know, but they're just constantly, you know, well, mom's gonna get me that, or dad,
Yeah.
or, you know, because they're split, so dad,
Yeah.
you get dad
Oh,
coming in.
that's the
Grandma
worst.
comes in with $100 check.
Yeah.
Here, buy my grandbaby $100 worth of books.
Yeah.
And I look at her and go, that's crazy. But, right? And it's, you get caught up in, you know, I mean, in a year we get $16,000 to these book fairs. And I feel bad because I think, we're just, because I tell them they can go to the library, you can go to the public library. Don't go home and say you have to buy this because you don't have to, because in a few weeks, well, a month or so, they'll be on the shelf and you can sign them out. Because that's my only, you know,
Yeah, you want to
guiltless
possess.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Because my child wants to rent a book and I never say no to books. Yeah, you can go to the library.
How many
You
books?
can go to my library.
Yeah.
But you know, it's my budget now, basically, because you know, everything's got, so that's how I get my book buying budget and it's,
Yeah. Again, it's how we're raising our kids,
yeah,
right?
yeah, these kids have to have it, and they see like, oh, that's an iPad, is that an iPad? No, it's erasers in there, it looks like an iPad. Or it's a highlighter, or it looks like an iPad.
Yeah.
But, oh, darn, I
Yeah.
said, yeah, we be selling iPads for $10.
Yeah.
But, you know, but that, it's just consume, it's, you
Wow.
know, and I feel,
Yeah.
I'm really torn, but I do like spending that $8,000.
Oh, of course.
But that's also in relation to religion and pop culture is that, and I talked about that I think in the first lecture about how as Christians, we may take a defensive posture, we may say that we're not influenced, we're
Right.
absolutely,
Absolutely, I don't care, I don't care.
absolutely
Yeah.
Well,
influenced by all these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
I find it a little scary that, yeah, even though I may not have made shopping my religion, I can still identify with certain
Oh,
aspects.
I still get live.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, but you think about like, okay, you're saying you really love shoes, right?
Yeah.
And you buy that pair of shoes because they make you feel good. They make you feel better about yourself. They make
Yeah.
you feel more confident or whatever.
Yeah.
So that you're like, oh, I've got that big presentation coming up. I'm gonna wear my shoes that I bought that made me feel good,
Oh, yeah.
and suddenly I'm more confident.
I know
And it would be amazing if we could take that mentality and say,
Yeah.
you know, I did this at church, and now
Yeah.
I can feel more confident about
Oh,
myself. I went into
I'm a
communion.
child of God.
I'm a child of God, therefore I
yeah,
can walk
yeah.
in with confidence in every step, or
Yeah.
whatever that slow
But even if you really, you still, you identify with this stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Because we're in the world.
I think the other thing
We
is to
are.
get over on the other side too far. I mean, well, maybe I'm just rationalizing. I mean, we were talking about the poor you have always with you. You know, it's not an excuse to
not
stop
help the
giving
poor.
to the
No,
poor
right.
to
Exactly.
help them.
Right.
Isn't that kind of the analogy I use? Like Saturday night, I enjoy my steak.
Yeah.
And I believe God wants me to enjoy
Yes.
that steak.
Yeah.
Well,
But it's
I think
when you
there's
get
the-
out of control. But I think for Christians again, we're absolutely being had. We've been hoodwinked. We really, and that's the kind of the point about blessings and some of the Christian marketing where Jesus jumped. It doesn't. It's no different.
No, not at all.
And it's a form of idolatry. But we think because if we put a Christian on it, the label Christian, that justifies it. That makes it
Yeah.
okay.
Well, it's like I don't know if you saw the cartoon that came out recently, and it's the picture of the hand-drawn nativity scene, and there's two zombies in the corner. And one kid says, you can have zombies in the manger scene. And he goes, well, what do you expect when they put out the Christmas decorations during Halloween?
oh yes.
Yeah.
See, I'm tempted to buy that.
Well, it was a cartoon drawing. I'll email you the cartoon.
Yeah.
It's a weird, wacky world.
It is a weird wacky.
One of the most interesting nativity sets that we saw had Santa Claus kneeling at the manger.
Well, of course he was there.
Like,
I mean, come on.
Along with the
But,
zombies.
but the original St. Nicholas,
It's the same.
Yes. Yeah. And I've had that question from a Jehovah's Witness at school, because I work in the public schools and stuff, right? And she asked me, do I believe that there's a Santa Claus? And I went, oh, okay, they're JW, I better be careful what I say. But, you know, I said, I believe in the spirit of it. I believe in giving and children that didn't have anything, and Santa brought that joy to families and children. So that's what I believe in.
But you see, that's how a piece of popular culture
Yes.
shaped us. It was
Yeah.
called Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol gave us our Christmas, our modern conception of it.
And then Coca-Cola gave us Santa.
Yes.
The first depiction of
The
Santa
real
with the
Santa.
beard and the red
Right.
suit
Yes.
was Coca-Cola.
Well, I never put a glass of milk out for Santa. I always put a glass of Coke out. And I knew Santa was real because every morning when I got up, the glass of Coke was
We were
Martha,
there
thank you
tonight.
so very, very much
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's still a but it's enlightening, isn't it?
Well, and you,
Thank you.
Scary.
what was interesting was that I hadn't heard Dr. Anderson talk about your presentation before, but Dr. Muir does a section called Pilgrimage in Sacred Space
Oh, yeah.
as one of his election ones.
Yeah.
And he talks about the mall as a place of
Yeah.
pilgrimage and the
Oh,
setup
does
when
he?
compared to a church.
Mm.
And he has an overlay that he has of a really basic mall floor plan and
Yeah.
one of the old cathedral floor plans that he does an overlay.
Neat.
So it was really funny when Dr. Anderson said you were doing this talk. I was like,
Yeah.
I think I've heard that. No, wait, I've heard the other.
Yeah.
So it was,
Yeah. Awesome.
On behalf of Dr. Gimple, Reverend Doctor,
Billy A.
thank you so much. It was, I really enjoyed it. When I asked my colleagues about what was going on and we were going to be doing religion and pop culture, I had no idea. And they said, oh, you've got Dr. Anderson, you'll just love it. And Melissa Buck speaks so well. And I was totally blown away. I'm sorry I missed last week due to an illness, but I've learned more about zombies and things that I never knew about. And it really opens up a huge window for me as I go forth in my studies to understand these young people of what's going on there. And our thanks again for coming out and for supporting the Quest program, the Fall Quest program. And we hope to see you again at the next one.
Yeah.
Especially thanks to Ellen for those. We hope to see you all again soon, and I just ask that you just join me in a big hand for Dr. Anderson. He's coming out of his very busy schedule to be here for these evenings.
Yeah, I really
Thank you
wanted
very
to be
much.
here. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
No,
for
that
coming.
was good.
Thank you.
Very much enjoyed it. Learned a lot.